Good morning. A very warm welcome to all of you who have joined us this morning. We are very excited for this morning's event. We will be exploring career opportunities for economic and management sciences. Before we start with our formal program, my name is Lisa Dazel. I'm from the Unisa Directorate for Counselling and Career Development. There's just some practical arrangements we want to bring under your attention. You will note that your camera and your microphone are currently disabled, but we will enable these during the event, during the live Q&A sessions. As you are listening to the presentations, please feel free to post any questions or comments you have either in the Q&A or the chat on Teams. But as I said, we will have the live Q&A sessions during which you will be able to ask your questions as well. We just ask that you don't share any personal information, that would be your personal email address, telephone number in the chat or Q&A, just to protect your privacy. We are recording the session and you will receive either an email with a link to the recording, or straight after the end of the event, you'll be able to access the recording on Teams in the chat for this meeting. So with that, if we look at our program for today, we have invited 3 speakers. So we will be talking about careers related to economic research and consulting, marketing and entrepreneurship opportunities, as well as recruitment to retention, building a career in HR. So with that, I would want to give a warm welcome to Professor Tabiseng Moraka. She is the Director of the School for Management Sciences at Unisa's School of Management Sciences. Prof. Moraka, very welcome, and you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Ms. Dazel, for that warm welcome that you have also done for all our esteemed guests and especially our students. Good day, and I want to also acknowledge our esteemed speakers today, Ms. Shanti Bai, Mr. Shanti Bai, Ms. Grace Nhlapo, Ms. Wipilo Soko, and also all Unisa staff members that are here, and colleagues especially from DCCD and KENS. On behalf of the University Management, our Executive Dean, Dr. Masi Chaba, and the entire college management, we welcome you to this very much important seminar that is really geared to assist you and to guide your journey, your academic and especially your professional journey. I want to remind us of the type of students that we are. A Unisa student is indeed a unique student because you are future ready. In your studies, if you remember, you are taught to be independent and self-motivated. You manage your own study schedules, you set your own deadlines, you take basically responsibility for your learning. And this requires high discipline, high self-direction, and most importantly, time management. Most of you balance multiple roles as working professionals, others parents, others caregivers, but also studying part-time. And this requires you obviously to balance the complex realities, the complex life responsibilities, and the ability to integrate all these demands really demonstrate that you are unique. You also engage with us on our digital platforms like this one, and all your assessments are online. And that means that we have developed you to be technologically savvy, and that is quite critical, especially for today's workplace. You also come from diverse backgrounds, from diverse perspectives, from diverse cultures, diverse linguistic backgrounds, making you rich in your perspective. And this obviously enhances and enriches your learning and broaden up your academic discussions, your outlook in life. You also demonstrate resilience. in the face of challenges. Some of our students study with limited resources, sometimes limited internet access, financial constraints, family obligations. But you demonstrate consistently resilience and the commitment to your own professional and career growth. You also have a lifelong learning mindset. You often pause sometimes and then come back and attempt that module again. Some of our students who graduate, they come back for honors, come back for masters, come back for PhD studies. So therefore, that lifelong learning mindset is actually crucial in your career. So you're not mastering just, your learning outcomes, your assessment criteria that are in your tutorial letters. You have developed and you are developing to learn independently, to adapt to digital environment, and to also juggle multiple responsibilities that often you have to pass through. Today's seminar day, hosted by Unisa's Directorate, Counselling and Career Development, is quite critical for your academic and professional journey. And it is designed to help you to connect your actual studies in our college, the College of Economic and Management Sciences, with emerging career paths to support. As a college, we align ourselves with the National Development Plan 2030, which basically calls for inclusive growth, for a skilled workforce that is going to assist us to tackle the socio-economic problems that we face in our country: poverty, inequalities, and unemployment. And we want to produce graduates that help us tackle these challenges. We also obviously align ourselves as a college with the Sustainable Development Goals and the African Union Agenda 2063, the Africa want, which is driven by innovation, by entrepreneurship, so that our graduates are locally and globally relevant. And I believe that the insights that you will gain today from a lineup of keynotes will assist to position you to be prepared for the world of work, for the industries, for the institutions, for the companies, for the businesses that you will want to start. And I want to thank, obviously, Ms. Makanya and your team at DCDD for having organized this very important session. We want to encourage students to ask questions, grab as much knowledge as you can. And I want to end by a quote that I like, maybe two quotes, by Oprah Winfrey. The first one, it says, the biggest adventure you can take is to live the life of your dreams. So you have to look at yourself right now. That question, am I living the life of my dreams? And this session will assist you to answer that question. The second one, and the last one that I want to end with, is also from Oprah Winfrey. It says, create the highest, the grandest vision possible for your life, because you become what you believe. So set a vision for what you aspire for. Thank you very much. I wish you a very fruitful session. Back to you, Program Chair.
Thank you so much, Prof. Moraka. For those in the audience, please let us put our hands together for that very warm welcome. For those of you who might be unfamiliar, you just click on the React button and you will be able to clap hands. So on that note, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Mrs. Mandu Makanya from the Directorate for Counselling and Career Development. She will be introducing our speakers to us this morning. Mrs. Makanya. Mandu, you're on mute.
Oopsie, apologies for that. Thank you, Lisa. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I will be introducing our speaker, but I will switch off my camera. Thank you very much. A good morning to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, and Unisans. It's an absolute pleasure to introduce someone whose work continues to shape our understanding of South Africa's economy. Ladies and gentlemen, our first guest speaker is a senior economist and strategy consultant with years of experience working across different sectors. He's been involved in a wide range of significant projects, everything from economic and trend analysis to policy research, strategy development, and impact assessments. His work supports both private and public sector clients, as well as NGOs, helping them make better and more informed decisions. Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker has his training from the universities of Cape Town, the University of London, and the University of Pretoria, and he brings that strong academic foundation into every part of his work. He is also a familiar voice in the media, regularly offering insightful commentary on key national issues, always thoughtful and grounded in the broader context. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me with a round of applause as I invite Mr. Xanti Pai onto our virtual stage. Mr. Xanti Pai, over to you, sir.
Thanks very much, Ms. Wakanya. I didn't hear any round of applause. I'm very disappointed, but I think I'll survive. Good morning, everybody. It is, I don't know if I'm audible.
You are. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It is really wonderful to join in with you this morning, to be able to also engage with you as we will today. As it has been said, my name is Xanti Pai, and I'm looking forward to spending the next few minutes with you. The way I propose to do this is to perhaps share a key piece of analysis that has been provided to us by the Reserve Bank that really sets a tone and sort of shows where we are and why the work, I guess, of economists, but of analysts and people who seek to help in understanding the world and solving some of the key problems, the kind of understanding that you have to carry. I often say that the kind of world that we live in is really one with multiple challenges which we face really at the same time. Something that we have not been used to dealing with over a period of time, in which you are literally facing decisions under circumstances where there are various challenges. I'm going to share therefore a screen. This is from the Reserve Bank, and this is really a way that they let's see, that they use in understanding the world. I think this might be useful. Let's see. Is that something that's is that screen visible?
We can't see it yet, Xanti.
Okay. Let's see. And now?
I'm not seeing it on my side.
Okay, so nobody can see it. All right, then maybe I'll try share. And how to share window. Share this window. And now?
I still can't see it on my side. Colleagues, Mandu, are you able to see it?
No, it's still not visible.
Okay, it's still not visible. Thank you for showing.
Okay,
will it help if you can send it to
Lisa.
To Lisa, and then she will project it for you?
Sure. I think that will be helpful. But what I'm trying to show here is really a what the South African Reserve Bank refers to as a risks and vulnerabilities matrix. And what it's really supposed to do is to show how the Reserve Bank has put together this this
Our apologies for that. It would seem that Auntie is experiencing some connection problems. Let's just give him a minute to rejoin. While we are waiting for him to rejoin, just from our side, I've posted in the chat. You are more than welcome to ask any questions or leave any comments that you have as you are listening to the different presenters. And we will answer the questions in the chat. Alternatively, you are also able to ask your questions live when we will have the live Q&A sessions.
Hello?
Mandy? Mandy, sorry, did you want to say something?
Is my hand up?
No, I can just see your microphone is open, but it's fine. Okay. If you will just give me a moment, let me just check in with Kanti what the problem might be, then we'll be back soon. Kanti, we see you are back. Kanti, your microphone is on mute.
I'm
You're audible now.
okay, and I think I'm on two platforms for some reason.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, they are much better. All right, thanks. So as I said, that we are actually finding ourselves in a situation in which, at any given time, leaders across our society, in business, and public and the private sectors, are finding themselves really struggling to actually deal with the kind of challenges that we are facing. The Reserve Bank, therefore, has put together this 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 slide that allows us really to look into the challenges and really understand them both from what are the challenges that are immediate, what are the challenges that are coming, what are the challenges that are permanent. Because as we know that on any given time, for example, we know at the moment that one of the key things that we are dealing with are issues in the public sector. So the debt crisis and the debt ratios that we are starting to be concerned about in terms of government. We know that we've got issues of critical domestic infrastructure failures. That's issues around water and infrastructure, energy, and that is something that affects all sectors of society, whether you are both in the public or in the private sector. If you are in a municipality, if you are a business in a municipality that's struggling with infrastructure, that's struggling with water, this is something that's going to find you. That's a vulnerability. We certainly have geopolitical tensions and political uncertainty. That's something that we are facing on a global basis, and that's something that is affecting even the smallest players amongst us, because of course these affect our food systems. This affects fuel, that fuel affects transport, affects commodity, energy, food. So it is not as if that all of the challenges that we are facing, both in the short term and the long term, and then they look at also what we think about as perpetual risks. And they think about that as climate change, they think about that as cybersecurity, and then they talk about low and inequitable economic growth. Now, these are things that are going to be with us. These are risks that are already with us. It's obviously climate change. These are the risks that emerge because of some of the disruptions that we are seeing in climate change that affect, for example, our food systems. We know that erratic weather patterns, unpredictable climate changes, unpredictable disasters that are coming at us on a regular basis are not just affecting the way we live in terms of how we build our homes, how we build infrastructure, how we develop transport systems, but it also means that because we're struggling with predicting weather systems and climate systems, we're struggling our farmers struggle to bring food to the table as has been predicted. Crop yields differ. The ability to bring that food at a reasonable price differs because, of course, you've got to provide insurance. And while I'm talking to insurance companies themselves are finding it difficult to predict risk because they obviously provide risk support to households and businesses. And of course, if you are having these erratic conditions that you are facing, it's difficult to say what risks are coming. And as a result, there has been discussion about whether or not there are risks that we will not be able to insure because they are either too large or even actually certain to happen. So you will have, for example, if we think about some of the floods that we continue to see in places like KZN, there may be places there that may not be insurable because insurance firms see that risk as almost certain. And so when we look at all of those kinds of things, we think about inflation, which is, for example, something that the Reserve Bank cares about very deeply, obviously, because inflation targeting is its key work, is that they look at that and they say, look, if we can't tell what crop yields we're going to be able to have from year to year, and therefore food prices will be fluctuating over a period of time, that means that inflation is going to be difficult to predict and to manage. And that's something they foresee as the perpetual and the potential risk. And because obviously they also look at the stability of our system, which is our financial system. Insurance firms are part of our financial system. That's very, very important part of it. And that if they can be hit hard on some of these risks, that is something that may affect the stability and the sustainability of our economic system. So if you look at all of these risks, all happening, of course, at the same time, cybersecurity is important that I don't forget that because that's a critical one that we are also facing, both as individuals, but as entities. It's something that is also endangering our work on a daily basis because we never can trust whether you are speaking to a colleague, that when you are sharing information, you are sharing actually with the person you think you're sharing that information with. And so people who have been trained, as we've been trained, in economics and business studies, we've been trained to look at things because we tend to be, some people will say you are a monetarist or you are somebody who, you do macroeconomics or microeconomics or, you are a macro strategist. All of these have been words that have been used, and actually some economists have refused to call themselves social scientists. But economics is a social science, very, very importantly so, in the sense that it actually deals with really the conditions that our society is under, as we know what social sciences are. And in that sense, while we may be trying to work with different models to predict the future, to try and and to attain some ability to tell what risks we are facing and be able to manage those, how we think about resources and how resources can be distributed. While there's a lot of numbers in that, actually it very much is underpinned by really social agents really trying to make things work. And in that sense, we have had this kind of training that has allowed us, and it's important to be able to allow us to be thinking about in a multipolar, in a world in which there are different things happening at the same time, and therefore does not allow anymore, for people to be particularly focused on one thing with a failure on understanding in other things. And that's why we see a lot of the curriculum, of course, is to try and really reach out both in terms of what are the macroeconomic trends and what are the microeconomic trends. But we're also seeing economics emerging, particularly in areas of behavioral economics, which have since now not been very prominent. They've been very niche kinds of studies, but they are very important because they allow people to help to think about individual behavior, what drives individual choices, and how those choices interact with the choices of other people, and therefore to be able to see how we actually are working and what decisions we can make and how individuals actually can be, I guess, in some sense, predictable. So in some sense, probably coming very close to, when we think about not just choice theory, but in a way that thinks about, the psychology of people and the psychology of choice. And this is important, not just, when we think about, our policies, but policy thinking as it can be done by the public sector. But it's important if we think about it, if you are, for example, somebody who's a financial advisor who is giving advice to your clients on products, and these clients are taking risks on products, do you want to understand, is this person somebody who is a high risk tolerant person, or is that a risk intolerant person? And that is important because while people during good times will tell you that they are risk tolerant, they are looking for the highest risk product, or they're willing to take the highest risk at this event or at this moment. But then when that risk materializes, they get really, really upset because obviously they suffer losses. And it's important to come back to that and bring that back and say, look, how do we actually evaluate that? And behavioral economics has been very helpful in actually helping develop, platforms or pathways to allow us to test whether people are what they say they are, that when they're faced with these choices and they make these things, they are in fact those kind of people that they say they are, because obviously people get very upset at loss, and that may affect people's businesses and the way that they run their work, and obviously lawsuits have emerged as a result. So the point I'm making is that in the world that we live in, one has to therefore bring in their full sense of analysis, their full sense of training, and also understand that importantly, you're going to have to wear more than just a hat to be able to understand the world as it exists, or as we actually face it at the moment. And so that is something that is very important and is part of what we are trying to do in creating understanding. And I've said, so in the work that I've been able to do over the years, this is becoming more and more critical, especially in strategy development and strategy thinking, is that in a world where before we could look at a world and say, look, people can develop an economic strategy for a country, or they can develop a business strategy for business, and they can say, look, can you please tell us what is the world going to look like in the next 5 years? So there will be something called forecasts. So when we think about forecasts, we think about, many of you would have had done statistics or econometric modeling, and that allows you to sort of say, look, we are able to look at GDP growth over the next 5 years. We are looking at inflation over the next 5 years. We're going to look at, because if I'm doing my business strategy, I want to know over the next 5 years, what will inflation look like? And whether or not that inflation number itself is a number that I can use to predict what I'm going to pay my workers, also what I'm going to face in terms of increasing costs. But as I've already highlighted to you, that because of the risks that we are facing, the changing environment constantly, that is becoming harder and harder to do. Because what inflation we may foresee today can be affected by issues that are actually outside of our control, outside of our predictability. I've mentioned already, climate risk is a particular risk that can affect inflation. It can affect prices because it affects our food systems and therefore our food pricing. If that is the case, then we have a situation in which this will continue to be something that that affects us. And so in that sense, one finds that we are, our models, our viability of models on the long term is difficult, but perhaps we can do something on the short term around what we provide as analysts, as consultants, to our clients to be able to just look at the world and understand the world and make plans accordingly. So one has to actually make sure that you have to actually look at an understanding that is better. And I'm glad that we are now receiving a question that says that, in a country of high unemployment rate and many people seeking employment, how does one maximize their chances to secure a job? I think that's an important question, because it really speaks to why we're here. Because if we understand this background that I'm talking about, and we understand that the world is changing and is changing quickly, you understand that we are going to have to be empowered with more than just one ability. You're going to be empowered with the ability to understand the world, to analyze it, and to be able to assist people, to be able to offer, knowledge, to be able to offer very thoughtful insights. Then you are going to be in a position to be able to find employment, because we can provide solutions to people. And that's a critical and a key part of the work that we have to do, is to be able to say, look, how do I position myself in a changing world, and understanding that world, and be able to say I can be of use, whether it is in my work where I have work, or potentially finding myself in a position to be able to, to provide solutions because I have an understanding that I've gotten that other people don't understand or don't share. And I think that that we can try and understand. And so what we the work that we have to do and the work that we have to understand is really built on this understanding that allows us really to be better than most people because we've had the kind of training that we've had as economists, and that is an important part of the work that one has to have an understanding of. Now, I started to share earlier that, sorry, just 1 minute if you don't mind. Okay, I started to share earlier that the changing environment and economics, particularly as a discipline, is something that one learns. Is gives you an ability to sort of think about the world, to understand the world, to be analytical, and that to use that because obviously, as I said, one has to think about it as a social science, and in a social world and in a changing world, where does one actually position? Oneself is an important part of thinking about that, and that oneself has to be able to also be able to understand the world and be able to share that understanding and to create new types of understanding. Where we're starting to lack quite a bit is actually people who are helping us to understand in a useful way the kinds of changes that we have been facing and be able to actually start understanding to make a better world of that understanding, to create solutions. How do we then solution? Because I've already highlighted very much the idea that we live in a world in which things are changing quite consistently. But it doesn't mean that because things are changing, we're not required to understand the world and we're not required to make decisions. How do we actually make those decisions in a manner that allows people to help us, to help people actually provide those solutions? And that is something that's much deeper, that requires us to actually to lean into as much as possible data, to lean into as much as possible engagement, and something that we are really, many of us are afraid of, is to engage with material, fully engage with material, whether we are looking at different kinds of data or we are looking at what people have produced in terms of what is the output, both in the academy, because there's a lot of output that's coming out of the academy that's helping us to understand the papers that are actually coming out on a regular basis, but also the opinions that are being shared by others are important. But what is also important, and that one has to understand, is to be very careful and discerning around what we are receiving. I've highlighted here the issue of cybersecurity and cyber risk, that there is a lot of false information and fake information that is presented as if it was actually authentic, and that requires us to be much more circumspect, to be much more closer to the detail, to be much more closer to the trends. And one of the things that I usually say when I engage with clients is that one of the things you're going to have to do is to read the data quite fully, to be able to get it and to be able to engage with it, so that you can see, when trends are breaking, when there's something that's suspicious in your data, that's suspicious in reporting, and that's something that will make sure that your strategies are actually resilient and they're not influenced by single events or by false information or by false interpretation that may emerge. I'm going to say one last thing that's important really in the understanding of information and understanding of data, which was part of in my recent article that I wrote for the Business Day. That speaks to some of the data that we receive, that we rely on a daily basis to make decisions about the future. I spoke about inflation. That inflation, for example, in South Africa is really well measured, it's well developed. Obviously, it could be better because things are changing. We could actually be moving it closer and closer to the changes that we're seeing. So when we think about, for example, our expenditure methods, we're spending more and more on technology and prices of cars. Somebody made an example to say, if you think about the price of a car, while cars look much more expensive than they've ever been, they actually carry much more in terms of technology than they've ever before. So they are different products. They're much more developed products. They're no longer just a product that we're buying, something that could take from point A to point B. Our cars now also provide us with communication facilities. They do all sorts of amazing things that they did not do before. It's the same thing with our computers. Whereas a computer now may be priced a little bit more than it was priced before, what it has been able to do and what it is able to do to support us is a much different product, a much bigger product. And therefore, if you think about it like that, then you may think about its price actually coming down than going up. And how do we actually infiltrate that in terms of how we think about these products, how we think about inflation itself? And then, of course, we know that inflation for poor people is different to inflation for the more, well-to-do people. And that's important because it tells us something about how, when we think about your workers, if you give everybody the same amount of an increase, say your inflation is at 3%, and you give everybody 3%, whereas actually inflation for the more poorer people is closer to 4.5%, whereas maybe for the more richer people, it might be even lower than 3%. And that means that if you don't actually look at those numbers and you don't come closer to them, you may exacerbate inequality. Because if you think about it, if you are somebody who is poorer and you are receiving inflation increases that are below what your actual inflation is, then you are going backwards. And that is the kind of thing that I think many over the years we have not taken account of, and that has exacerbated economic inequality, and that has also then made problems that are worse in terms of our social systems. So I'm going to stop there, having just given you just sort of that teasing of the kind of environment that we're in, what kind of economists are required to think about, and how they are supposed to support the work of other economic agents, in particular if you are calling yourself sort of a consultant, but also to say it's important to think about our environment much more deeply, because as things change, you're going to be required to be amongst the better thinkers in our environment, to be able to provide solutions through the analysis that we do and that we provide to society at large. I'm happy. I think I've come to the end of my talk, and I'm happy to take questions and inputs if that is available. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kanti. Let's give a applause to Kanti for that important information that he shared. Kanti, I'll ask you a question. I know that you've already responded to one of the questions that you saw in the chat. But just from your side, if you also think about, your experience of getting into the field where you are now, is there any advice or tips that you think would be important for students to consider as they are preparing for opportunities in this very broad and, as you also mentioned, volatile world in terms of economics? So any hints or tips that you can share with students?
Look, I think if I think about my own experience in my own environment, I mean, obviously it's been many years. It's been probably like 17 years in the field, and things have changed quite a bit. Whereas people entered the environment at the beginning as maybe you're an assistant economist, you start at different places. But one of the things that I think has been very helpful is that people want to know that you are really as broad-minded as possible. You are thinking about the issues and you have immersed yourself in them. And that's important because whether they are looking for junior economists or senior economists, or they're looking for analysts, that you'll find quite a bit now. They are looking for analysts, they're looking for researchers. There's a lot of work that's being done. And it's important that people also recognize this, and I think it's important to say, is that there's a lot of discussion around AI, that AI can provide many of the answers that we need. So for example, you can send AI to answer many of the questions that researchers use to answer, because this thing can go out there and you can ask it any question. Ordinarily, at the beginning of your career, you would have had to go out and research this thing and find 5 data sources. But what's also important, and what people are starting to look away from, and I think that's important to understand, is that methodology or getting to an answer is a particularly important path in terms of what we're doing, because every answer you get represents something quite special. So if you are doing a piece of research and you're finding, for example, what is the nature of unemployment in South Africa, it's a very big question. And you can find that, people will say no, because the economy is not growing. That's one answer. So people give that answer. But if you look at the data, and you can certainly send AI, and AI is likely to bring you that. But you get to that answer, particularly if you do the work in a particular way, how you actually, for example, can do your what I guess we would have done some regression analysis for those who are very well onto that, or any other analytical toolkit that can be employed. Now, AI can give you one answer because it collects data from what sources are available. Now, it is not telling us perhaps something that is changing in the system. For example, we know that things are starting to change fundamentally. New information is coming in. So the question you ask the machine, the question you ask the tool itself is important for the answer you're going to get. And I'm finding more and more that the questions that are being put out there and that are actually going to help you to set yourself apart are important. And I know many of you will do pieces of research. And that when we look quite closely, because you're going to go and do an interview with someone for a job as a researcher, you're going to do a job for someone as an analyst or an economist or a strategy associate, because there's a lot of opportunities in terms of strategy associate, because everybody's looking for answers. How you approach a problem, and how open-minded you are, that you are not actually artificial intelligence, but you are really connected to the different engagements that people are having, and we are close to this, to the information itself. There was a piece of analysis that somebody did actually on AI. They said that a lot of people think that, because you've received an answer, you've been able to think about the problem. It becomes very clear when people have actually used just artificial tools to be able to get to an answer, because they didn't think about that. Somebody else has thought about that, and they've thought about the methodology itself, how they got to that answer, what techniques they've used, what questions they've answered, where they're looking for at a rural area versus for example, an urban area. Is this a developed market or a developing market? These are important questions that are important if we are trying to think about, for example, employment. So the point I'm trying to make is that it's becoming clearer and clearer that while artificial intelligence is important, what is more important and is more needed are people who, when they present themselves in front of somebody who is looking to hire a consultant, to hire an associate, to hire a researcher, to hire an economist, an emerging economist, or somebody who's starting up, is that person is an understanding that you are not somebody who's lazy. You are able really to lean into the problem. You are able to lean into the questions that we all have to answer. And that actually, in terms of the methods of thinking, the methodology and the approach itself, is something that's very clear. And unfortunately, if all your assignments are being done by artificial intelligence, you're going to struggle very much to be able to. You're going to struggle very much to to answer in a convincing way that you understand the world and that you understand and you are somebody who can bring solutions, because what is needed here is people who are both able to think about the world, and once you've thought about the world, to be able to help to think about what are the potential solutions that can be employed to contend with the issues that are at hand. And I think one of the key areas where the many failures, especially of young people that are coming in, is on that second part, because they themselves have not been engaged with the issues. They've relied too much on these open sources that it makes them then even more difficult to be able to engage with solutions, because the methodology and the research methods have themselves been compromised. So I think the key thing for students is really the ability to engage quite closely with the data, with the work, so that you are able to be convincing, you set yourself apart in an interview, because you are able to articulate really the one thing that people need, which is solution development.
Thank you so much. You've actually also touched on the second question, which is the impact of AI on your field. But I think what stands out for me from your answers, that it's very important, even as you're studying, even as you're doing your assignments, even just projects that you take on, on your own time to practice. That you use those critical thinking, your analytical skills, and also really engaging with the topic or with the data that you are working with, the problem that you're trying to solve. I'm going to open the the floor now for further questions. How it will work is that if you would like to ask Kanti a live question, you just click on the raise button in Teams, and then I will unlock your microphone, and then you can ask your question. So I see a hand already. Paul, let me just unmute your mic. You are welcome to go ahead and ask your question. Paul.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mpho Chauke. Since Mr. Shanti, thank you very much for your information that you have shared. We have touched base actually on the issue of high unemployment rate in our country. So as an undergraduate that's currently job seeking, with the knowledge about international business management that I've obtained through an Erasmus Plus student exchange program, and also with a diploma in safety management, what are the chances of getting employment in a business sector or in an economic field? Thank you.
Thanks very much. Look, I think firstly, it's important to say that the world of work has become quite fluid. I think that's the right word. Is that you'll find, for example, in consulting, there's a lot of people that have done different kinds of things because obviously, as I said, there's more than one challenge at any given time. Now, obviously, you're not going to be a doctor with an economics degree but you mentioned, for example, what safety management. I assume that has to do with, I guess, there's some security issues that are emerging quite a lot because of some of the challenges that we're facing. So one of the key things that we are seeing is that with the growing uncertainty, especially post-COVID, is that security has become quite an issue. Safety and security has become quite an issue because we are unsafe, as it has still left a lot of people outside the economic system. So people are finding other ways of doing work, whether they are doing work or creating businesses that may be, not legitimate and therefore harmful. So that's one area. The other area is certainly, and therefore, more people who are in that space of the world, or where they are in an environment where the dangers that we're facing within the work environment themselves have increased because of people's inputs that may not be legitimate, given obviously that people are sort of started trying to cut some corners to make a little bit more. So safety and security being a key issue given the post-COVID world, and really the risks and the uncomfortable situation that we're finding ourselves in. So that's one area where, but the point really being that you've got to lean in and make the connections that are actually there. Because if we don't make the connections, especially if you're a person who is emerging from the world, so if you're not able to make those connections, I'm trying to make the connections, for example, between your business training and say your safety training, and how you make those connections so that the person you are sitting in front of is trying to say, look, is this person set apart? The way that you are setting yourself apart is that you are making the connections, and you are going to be able to add value in terms of how they contend with the challenges that they are facing, because you are not only just sort of a linear person who has done the safety studies, or one person who's done business studies, but that you can make the connections between these two things and the way that they are working. And that is what I think is going to differentiate people, so that whatever opportunity is available or emerges and you are taking advantage of. I mean, we see a lot of opportunities on LinkedIn, and one says, no, but I can't do that, or I can't do this. It's often because you have not been able to make the connection between your experience and your world of training, what your training has been about, and what the challenges this person is actually facing are. As I say, obviously, there are still wide disparities where you could be looking at somebody, you could be somebody where you are doing you're not doing medicine, but at the same time, can you make the connections in terms of how we're actually thinking about the various challenges and what your training, your academic training, has been able to provide you through the time you've been doing assignments, what you contended with in terms of the case studies, because those case studies are, I know a university like Unisa is very much a space where there is a lot of information, there's a lot of access, and that you would have been able to engage with colleagues in some opportunities. And what did you learn about that, and what value, therefore, are you able to give? And I think that, for me, is an important thing, is to say, how do you say you're a person that is going to add value? And if you can actually articulate what you do to add value, then you've done much better than most people who actually are just bringing in different two pieces of training, but they have not made the connection between those, and how those therefore create value or add value to the person who may be looking to hire you.
Thank you very much,
Okay,
Paul, for your
thank you.
question. Thank you. Thank you, Kanti. I see there are two more hands, so if we can just keep it brief. But Aaron Kambende, you are welcome to unmute and ask your question. Aaron?
Thank you for the opportunity, and good morning, colleagues. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, mine is just a question in terms of academic accessibility, because in my case, I completed a BTech postgraduate diploma and an honors. I tried to register for masters in HRD with UJ. Went through the interviews, everything. When I was supposed to start, did a proposal. Then I was told right in January, no, the supervisors have withdrawn. We don't have enough supervisors. Try to apply through Unisa, you're not getting any reply. And my honors I completed I did it with Northwest University, and they were honest because of supervisors in the field. They were taking only one student for masters. So what are my options now in terms of an HRD field?
I don't think that's a question for me.
I will help you out, Kanti. I think, Aaron, what I would recommend is that there's two ways that we can go about this. Portia, I'm going to ask also from your side, from the college, but there's two parts. So the one is about, let's say, for example, you cannot be accepted to a master's degree right now. So that's one thing, that you can talk to us about in terms of your career and your related study planning. But of course, we also have to address the issue that you mentioned about not getting a response. So my suggestion would be is that when I share our contact details at the end of the session, please reach out to us so that we can have an individual discussion about those issues. I think, Kanti, before we let you go, just maybe a general question in terms of, progressing in this field. You spoke about the importance of making connections between what you're studying and what the problems are, how you could solve those problems from your training or educational background. How important is postgraduate studies, for example, in the field of economics in general?
Yeah, it's very important, and I think the key issue, I see somebody, for example, has put on there about something about ESG, and analytics and data. That's obviously a key area that people are focusing on. They're taking what your training has been and focusing on areas that are developing or they are growing in the sense. And I think that's what is really, really useful, has been that, it's one thing to continue and do a master's in the one area. So, for example, postgraduate study is important because it sets you apart. But we also know that one has to be careful because it depends what type of postgraduate study you are doing. So if you are doing, for example, a master's through coursework, that's one thing in terms of, because there you sort of are doing a little bit on the in-depth work that is being done in the particular field you may be looking at, whether it's managing economics, maybe that will help you to work at the Reserve Bank. Also, maybe in some other, there's also obviously also areas of regulatory areas that can be very, very, very specific to particular postgraduate studies that allow you to zoom into a particular field. That's important. That's important also, though. Usually works much better if you're already in the area and your transition can assist that. What's important, though, is to also to look at how you do postgraduate studies. For example, data science is an important one. Somebody talked about data management and many of us are looking at saying, we understand the world, but there are certain trends and understanding and being able to look at this big data and fit this into important work. Some of the work that we are doing, for example, is that we are looking at an area that is growing quite well, which is, the informal sector. Everybody has been talking about the informal sector, I'm sure. Those informal businesses, there's a lot of data that's emerging around people who are own account workers who go, for example, and buy and sell goods, who are providing services to certain companies. And you look at those and you say, but these people, how are they making it? What opportunities are they presenting, for example, for other businesses, for collaboration? And then we take that and we analyze the data of how many people are in there. What are they spending? What are their spending patterns? What are their consumption patterns? All of those kinds of things. Now you are bringing both what we have been training in terms of, your background training, and what big data is starting to give us as an opportunity going forward, as people who are in the economics and management field. So economics and management is important, but what we've then done is that if you are going for postgraduate studies, I would say that it's important to then look at some of the emerging areas that are of focus, that are helping people make decisions. And big data or data management is important. Sustainability is a key area that's growing, even though it's been disrupted by, by leaders like President Trump. It's a little bit slowed down. For example, in Europe, it's facing a lot of opposition. But it's an important area because climate change cannot be pushed back without actually people who know what they're doing and advising us as society and providing the right kinds of analysis and data. So that's important. So I would say that what is important is to really try and say, when you are doing that further studying, you are leaning now closer to some of the key thematic areas of study that are important. There's some of the specializations that are emerging that are allowing you, therefore, to earn that niche part in the market, rather than sort of focusing generally on doing just a generalized, honors or masters. But you are actually leaning into some of those areas of study that will give you a little bit of an edge.
Thank you so much, Kanti. So really being quite intentional and strategic even about, as you are considering further studies, what could help you specialize and set you apart from other candidates. So on that note, I see we've just got over 270 people in the meeting. Kanti, I'm sorry that you can't hear the applause, but let's see the applause. So let's all give Kanti a warm round of applause, and thank you very much for your contribution. We will then move on to the next portion of our program, but thank you very much for being here this morning.
Thanks very much.
Okay, but on that note, I'm going to hand over to Mrs. Makanya. If you could just introduce our next speaker to us.
Thank you, Lisa. It gives me pleasure to introduce our next speaker. She is the founder and managing director of Health 365, a wellness-first enterprise she established in 2014. Prior to founding Health 365, our speaker, ladies and gentlemen, built a successful career in the private sector as a marketing professional, where she gained deep expertise in brand development, audience engagement, and strategic communications. Her corporate background continues to inform her approach to wellness advocacy, ensuring that every program and initiative is both impactful and market-related relevant. With more than a decade of entrepreneurial leadership, our speaker, ladies and gentlemen, has positioned Health 365 as a trusted platform for wellness solutions, delivering tailored experiences to individuals, corporate clients, and community-based organizations. Her work includes keynote presentations, stress management workshops, health retreats, and employee well-being campaigns, all rooted in a deep understanding of marketing, motivation, and human connections. Ladies and gentlemen, our speaker is also a certified fitness instructor, experienced retreat facilitator, and seasoned master of ceremonies, with over 15 years of hosting experience. She is widely recognized for her ability to engage audiences with professionalism, empathy, and clarity, whether on stage, online, or in executive boardrooms. Her influence, ladies and gentlemen, extends to digital platforms where she actively shares wellness insights, thought leadership, and highlights from her programs to promote a healthier and more meaningful way of living. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me pleasure to welcome on our virtual stage Miss Grace Ntlapo. A round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. Over to you, Grace.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Grace. The microphones are muted at the moment, but let's give Grace a hand clap.
Okay, cool. I have not done virtual speaking engagement since COVID days. This is actually the first that I'm actually doing ever since COVID. What an honor and a pleasure to be, with you guys this morning. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you so much for that. I'm hoping everyone is keeping nice and warm there at home. You have your cup of coffee, your cup of tea, as we proceed with the program. All right, I'm going to go straight into the presentation. So just for the purposes of orienting myself with this discussion, because it's a virtual meeting, I'm sure that I'm not always going to get automatic, feedback to what I'm saying, so I can always just proceed and chat. And if there are any interjections required, please, by all means, I don't know what the rules are of engagement, but I'm happy for you to maybe raise your hand and we can, point you out, or unmute and just, give your comment, question, feedback. I hope that makes sense.
I think, Grace, what we've agreed on is that as you are presenting, everybody is welcome to post their comments or questions in the chat.
Okay.
But we will then enable the microphones after your presentation so that you can take the live questions.
All right, that makes 100% sense. Okay, perfect. So firstly, thank you so much for this invitation. What a pleasure and an honor to present to you. I'm going to just start off with a short story about how I got into marketing. I must say that I think people these days, there's a lot more information. I mean, we live in an information world where information is always available and really available literally on our phones. Back when I was starting, when I was in high school trying to decide what career am I going to go into, obviously there were career days at school, but sometimes you just don't get enough information. And those who may remember, back in those days, there was a soapie called Generations, where there was a Morocco family. They used to own an advertising agency, and based on how they just, positioned the advertising and marketing world in the soapie, I was like, oh my word, this is it. That's definitely my career. That's exactly what I'm going to do. And so that's how I got into the world of marketing. Just a brief background, I started off in the advertising world, and then I transitioned into marketing, and then I transitioned into entrepreneurship. And so today, I suppose because of that decision I made back then when I was watching Generations of being in the marketing world, here I am today speaking to you around exploring marketing and entrepreneurship opportunities. And I think those two are so interlinked, especially in the day and age that we live in. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you will be aware of the level of unemployment rate in South Africa. We've got lots of people that go into studying. Some of them are able to get into, corporate careers. Others are not able to. They have to start their own business. And so I feel like there's such a strong link between marketing and entrepreneurship in helping, I suppose, entrepreneurs in building their businesses and helping, alleviate the unemployment rate. I mean, if we were to go into the stats of, how the call it informal world, informal trade is contributing towards unemployment rate, it's quite significant. I know lots of banks are going into this market to try and also benefit from it and also just assist entrepreneurs in growing. Now back to marketing. One of the things that I'm not sure, I mean, when I was chatting to the Unisa team, I know that there's a mix of students. There are, entry undergrads, there are postgrad students. And so the discussion, I suppose, or the chat that I'm going to be putting to you today, I suppose it's going to cater to everybody across all the different levels. So please, if it seems a little bit too undergrad for you or too postgrad or too practical for you, please understand I was trying to cater to as many audience as possible, which is why we need marketing, because marketing is a study of understanding your target audience to a point where you know who exactly they are so you can address their need. Now, one of the first things that I learned when I walked into the marketing classroom when I was doing my undergrad was the 4 Ps, which I'm sure you guys already know, and I'm not going to harbor on them. It's about the product, it's about the price, it's about the place and the promotion. So the product is what product or service are you selling, and at what price are you selling it for, and place, distribution, where can I get it, promotion, how am I going to promote, market it, and how people are going to know about it. And that's basically, back in those days, what marketing truly was. And it's evolved so much, especially now that we live in the information age, social media, and all those good things, and things are readily and easily available to us. Now, the slide is about me. If, for instance, let's say for this meeting, you were sent this picture, or at least the slide, to say, come through to this discussion. We're going to have Grace Nhlapo, who is, I'll still give it a benefit of, who's the founder and managing director of Healthy 365, and she has over 15 years experience in marketing management. If you look at this, how many people would be enthusiastic and excited to say, oh yes, definitely I want to go hear from Grace Nhlapo? Not a lot, because the picture doesn't quite tell a story of, the founder and managing director of Healthy 365 with over 15 years experience in marketing management. So the copy says, oh, this person sounds interesting, I'd like to hear from them. However, the picture is a completely different story. And so that's, again, what marketing is about. You've got to be clear about how are you going to start building your brand as a marketer, whether it's for a product, for a service, or for yourself. You've got to understand, how will you build your brand? What are the various nuances about you that people will know, that your audiences, that your target market will know about you? So this is a picture of me when I was still studying and I was working back in those days at Pick n Pay. I was not even a marketer yet. But one thing I'm going to tell you about this phase of my life was one of the best marketing lessons that I learned without even realizing it. Here, I worked at Pick n Pay back in the days where Sean Summers, who is now back at Pick n Pay, was the CEO. And they were big on staff training. They were big on taking care of staff and ensuring that the staff understands their brand values. Look, for me, when you think about a brand, the people that actually sell to the product, to the customer, should live and breathe the brand. So it doesn't help to have a whole incredible marketing strategy and marketing plan that sits in our boardrooms, and yet the people that speak to our consumers, the various touch points. So your touch point would be your social media, your website, your TV ads, your radio ads, including the people that speak to your consumers. They've got to live the brand. So this was a phase in my life where Pick n Pay back in those days was big on building the brand. There was actually a song I remember we used to sing during training days that went, I am Pick n Pay, I must build the brand, not break the brand. And basically what they then said was, every time you speak to a consumer, every time you do something, think about whether are you building a brand at the moment or are you breaking the brand. And so when I bring it back to, today's age, where I'm a marketer, and then I'm also an entrepreneur, in every single thing that I do, I've got to ask myself, the brand that I've built over the years, in what I'm saying or doing, am I building the brand or breaking the brand? And this is something that I learned before I even touched a marketing textbook. And so I'm sure you guys also will have various examples that are similar to mine. And so what am I saying? I'm saying marketing is all around us. We just are not aware what exactly it is because we haven't gone through the theoretical information around it.
Grace?
Now, yes.
My apology. Your slides are not moving, so I'm not sure if you are still going to go through the different slides.
Okay, so I have been moving slides. So am I still on the 4 points?
We can see your About Me slide now.
So this is the About Me slide that you can see. Okay, I might have to do this manually. So this is unfortunate. Apologies for that. So
No problem.
This is the slide I was talking about, to say, you know, if you get invited to a speaking engagement and they say Grace and Clap is coming, you know, when you look at this, you're not going to be too eager to jump on it. I'm not going to repeat what I said. I'm going to move on to the next slide. Okay, are we on to the next slide? That has my social media handles as well.
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay, now the information starts filtering in. Okay, here's Grace Nhlapo. That's her experience. Oh, here's her social media account from a personal point of view and a business. Here's her LinkedIn. Now I've got a bit extra information about Grace. Let me go and search about Grace, because we live in that age where people go and search, and then you go and search about Grace. Now, has Grace ensured that there's enough about her in the platforms for people to know? Is she building the brand deliberately to make sure people know? You know, yes or no, you know. So for me, one of the things that I will say is that I've learned over the years that it's very important as you build your brand, in your career, it's very important to ensure that the target audience that you are looking at is able to see the information. Now, when you go to the third slide, which is a relatively latest picture of me on the left with the information on the right, it tells you my name, what I currently do, my previous experience, my social media handles. It also gives you career highlights. So one of them, and this is not all of them, this is some of the career highlights that I thought are worth noting. So I've won an award for the National Tour for Freshly Ground that I looked after. I've won an award, an individual award for a national tour I did for the late Zahara. I've won a team award for the Nedbank Golf Challenge. I've won a team award for Nedbank Cup. I've won a team award for Nedbank Youth X campaign. There's a reason why I put those highlights, which are individual and team awards, and I'll touch on it later on. But the point of this slide was for me to say, you know, you've got to be cognizant in terms of how you position, number one, your product or your service in the market, as a marketer, in a way that entices your target audience to say, yes, I want to buy, yes, I want to be a part of this. And then when you speak about personal branding from an entrepreneur point of view, you've also got to be cognizant and clear around how you position yourself in the market. I mean, if you go back to the topic today is exploring marketing entrepreneurship opportunities. You cannot, unfortunately, separate yourself from personal branding when you want to be an entrepreneur, particularly when you are doing or going into the field of personal products, where clients need to use products and services that you personally are involved in. And so people want to buy from people they know. And there's studies that have shown that entrepreneurs that have social media presence and digital presence will get more success as opposed to the ones that don't necessarily have social media presence. And so touching on that, it's quite important as an entrepreneur, as a marketer even, for you to be able to obviously sell your product, have the right product for the customer, price it correctly, and be in a position or in distribution areas where clients can get it and market it properly, as well as ensuring that as an entrepreneur, you also brand and market yourself well. Moving on to the next slide. I've now gone into the next slide, which is cars. Are we on cars?
Yes.
Fantastic. Okay. So there's a movie I once watched a long time ago, and there's a line I never forgot. And it was a movie about an advertising guy. It was one of these Hollywood movies, and there was an intern that was asking the managing executive of that advertising agency to say, what do people want? Obviously, as an advertising agency, our job is to sell to them, and we want to sell in such a way that they actually buy. So what is it that people want that we can sell to them? And that line said, people don't know what they want. We tell them what they want. And so loosely stated, yes or no. But to be honest, marketing plays such a huge role. Marketing and branding play such a huge role in a customer decision-making process. Now, this slide speaks to a consumer that has a need to get into a car from point 1 to point B. Both these cars do pretty much exactly the same thing, right? You can still get into 5 people, you can fit into both these cars. It can drive from point A to point B. The windows are electronic. You can get air conditioning in there. However, would you charge a client or price these cars at 500K each? Unfortunately not, even though they do exactly the same thing. Obviously, because of the obvious things such as technology and all of those good things in terms of the other car doesn't have the technology, etc. But the most critical thing is the brand. The BMW brand is so powerful and has been built over the years, and it's so powerful that people are prepared to pay a premium for it, as versus the other product on the right-hand side that has not necessarily positioned itself in the same, call it segment as the BMW. Now, is there a market for both of them? Absolutely. There is a market for both these cars. However, you then price them differently because you're speaking to different audiences. Moving on to the next slide. And again, I'm trying very hard to not make this a marketing lecture because I'm not a lecturer. I'm just here to speak about my own personal experience in my own career. And, you know, marketing management in relation to entrepreneurship, how do you tell them what they want? How do you tell people what they want? Remember, I asked a question earlier to say, you know, people don't know what they want. We tell them what they want. You also can't just tell them what they want. Those who've probably read the definition of marketing, it is understanding customers, what they want, how they want it, what price they're willing to pay, and selling it to them in a manner that makes money for the business. So that's basically what marketing is about. Marketing is there to add value to a business. You know, so you can't just have a product without a marketing plan, because the marketing plan is what takes a product to the market, right? Now, the important thing is, as you see there, that little meme, who else should we target? You know, in its simplicity, you know, there's male and female, right? Okay, there's other areas underneath male and female, but what do they want? You know, there are different races, as we know, there are different segments. You know, the bottom of the pyramid is middle market, there's affluent. Under there, you also double click, you know, their psychographics, their culture, their background, all of those insights, which then lead them to what exactly are their needs and how do they receive your messaging. So then you've got to be very clear around, who am I selling to? What do they want? What do they need? How do I communicate to them? And how do I position myself within this market? And I'm going to go back to the BMW conversation where I was speaking about how the BMW brand has positioned itself in a specific manner within the market segment. There's a piece of research that I was reading around how the Chinese cars are making waves where, you know, people are now opting to these Chinese brands versus the German cars that everybody knows about. Why? It's because of the price factor. You know, as the economy, you know, now that we're in the economic downturn, you know, clients or customers are more price sensitive. And so they're looking for value for their money. You know, so I'm going to look at brand X from China, which cost X amount, versus brand B from Germany that cost X amount. Do these brands give me pretty much the same utility? yes or no. Then because I'm a price sensitive customer, I'm going to then pay this amount. And so when you start as an entrepreneur, when you decide on what business am I going to go into, you've got to be clear to say, where is this gap? So you go and understand there are various segments within the market. You know, we've got the middle market, lower end, affluent, and the elite. Where is the clear need within the market for your specific product and need? And then you hone in on that, and then you develop a continuous marketing communication plan to embed yourself within the market. If I go to the next slide, sorry, I'm doing all of this manually. So moving on to, you know, my career stages. So these are some of the pictures from my career days, and you know, my copy deck there is pretty much simple. Is doing your job enough? So I've jumped onto, you know, career stage. Is doing your job good enough? What you must know before you start your career. Do I need my own marketing plan? Look, it depends on what you're wanting to achieve. Again, I did mention earlier that I'm not sure what's the percentage of people who are undergrad, postgrad, in jobs, out of jobs, looking for jobs. But one of the critical things that I'm going to say, not just in marketing, I'd say in any career, it's very important to absolutely, yes, understand your job, learn continuously and grow and perform well in your job. But while you're doing that, figure out how you're going to do your own marketing plan or your own PR plan. Because if you think about an organization, I would go back to marketing department. A marketing department, I mean, if I go back to, you know, I've worked for FNB, Standard Bank, Netbank, I've worked for other advertising agencies. In a typical Netbank marketing department, there's about 80 to 100 of us. And we are all managing various campaigns. As you would imagine, there's different types of campaigns, products, and services. And you can very easily get lost in that. And, you know, you don't get to truly be seen. So in order for your career to transition and grow in the direction that you want it to grow in, it's also important for you to think about how, over and above doing my job, how am I going to look at other parts where I'm going to market myself? Now, how I did it was I used my own talent. So yes, we go to school and we study a specific career to become to study towards a specific profession. But we also have other gifts over and above that. So I then used, you know, my public speaking abilities to then obviously work with them within the bank. So I would do emceeing, speaking engagements, etc., which then led to me being identified into doing other things within the bank, which then would position you as an employee that truly adds value within the bank, and you get seen and recognized for other things other than just being recognized for your job, which is obviously your salary, your bonuses. I mean, one of the things I would also be involved in was community building projects a lot, where I also won a community building award. So holistically, those things add to your career, and not just your career, because I love not just our career, they add to your life, because I never thought that one day I'd be running my business full time. And so all the stuff that I did while I was employed, they put me in good standing in order for me to do what I now do full time. So this is also part of, you know, personal branding in action, where I spoke about how I did emceeing. And then the article there, it was on our internal newsletter about me as the marketing manager back then at Middle Markets Netbank Cup. And it speaks about, you know, what I do, you know, my business. They speak about my business on there and the various things that I get involved in outside of my day-to-day job. Now, I started my business in 2014 while I was working at Netbank, and I ran those concurrently. And I was fortunate enough to work for an employer that, you know, was allowing me to be able to do both those things, I suppose, because obviously there was no conflict between the two things. And so my personal branding initiatives and my giving off my service within my business. And again, I wasn't getting paid for the additional things that I was doing. Sometimes you've got to be okay to do certain things without expecting to be paid, because these are the things that were great training ground for me to be able to do other things that I then later did, and which is obviously now my business. And then this is the last slide that speaks about the various things I got involved in. And this is one of the internal marketing campaigns that we had at the bank. And I also served as a model there. That's me in my uniform. Some of you may know that NetBank is also in Boxer stores. This is one of the campaigns that I worked on. Now, what am I saying? I'm saying that I've had such an incredible and fulfilling marketing career. So firstly, it started off with me studying, obviously getting to know, the marketing world. I started working, and as I started working, I also gave off of myself within my career fully and showed up fully in a manner that enabled me to be positioned within the companies that I worked for in order for my talents to be recognized and do more. And that then led to me, as I said earlier, opening my business. And this is my last slide. And this is now Healthy 365 in 2014 versus 2024. So on the left, it was my interview on Soweto TV. This is the year I launched my business, Healthy 365, and I was interviewed on Soweto TV. Again, it's because all these networks that I've built in terms of say, oh, our employee is now doing X, Y, and Z. I'm in marketing, and then people identify me. Oh, great. Can we hear more about your business? And again, I gave you guys my social media handles earlier. People would see, I suppose, Soweto TV actually saw that to say, Grace, we like what you're doing, we'd like to interview you. And 10 years later, last year was exactly 10 years since I launched my business. I was featured on the Entrepreneurship show on Business Day with Rams Mabota over there. This episode flighted last year, where my business was being positioned, or rather I was interviewed about my business. So what I'm saying is marketing and entrepreneurship are so tightly intertwined that firstly, you cannot, at least, look, if you're going to go into the tech world, that's a completely different world. But if you're going to do consumer goods, consumer service, consumer products, you've got to be prepared to also build a personal brand. You've got to be prepared to also be out there in the media platform in order for people to hear and know about you. And also, it's important to know which platforms are you in and what are you saying in those various platforms. So for instance, if you go to my LinkedIn, if you go to my TikTok, if you go to my Instagram, there are sometimes different there's different content that I speak about because I'm clear about what my target or who my target audiences are in the various platforms. And so in summary, I hope I've added value in your marketing career or upcoming or still coming up. And basically that's just my story, what I wanted to share with you. It's still morning this afternoon.
Thank you so much, Grace. Before we go over to the questions, I'm going to allow those who are attending to ask questions now. I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked our previous speaker. So maybe just as the last pointer from you, are there any specific tips in addition to the many that you've already shared with students who are now, at different levels in their careers? What are some of the things we can start doing to effectively prepare ourselves for career opportunities in the marketing field? And then maybe, as the previous speaker did, also comment a bit about the impact of AI in the realms that you are moving in at the moment.
Okay. So I'm going to start off with the various tips. Look, the world has changed so much since I went into, market entry. So right now, jobs are advertised everywhere. So there are various platforms where people can go and upload their CVs. For instance, LinkedIn has become such a critical tool in helping people apply for jobs. So if you go on LinkedIn, upload your CV, build a LinkedIn profile, be active on LinkedIn, you'll easily be able to identify jobs that are available and apply. Now, going into AI, the challenge now is that unfortunately, not all these job opportunities, or rather these applications, are firstly seen by human eye. They're now being seen by AI, and AI will look at keywords that are firstly in the advert for the job and in your CV. So if those keywords are not necessarily there, you may be disqualified by AI, not by the HR manager, which could be beneficial or not. So it starts becoming very important, I would say, for all of us to figure out how are these machines working in order for us to work with these machines so that we don't lose out on opportunities that were rightfully ours. So they have advantages and disadvantages. AI has its advantages and disadvantages. So very critical when applying for jobs. Don't just upload on PNet website. Don't just upload on career websites. Make sure that you've fully read the job description and you're clear about what it is, and ensure that in your CV there are those keywords that are on your CV that are also on the application, so that AI or machines can then pick it up, and then at least you can move and jump onto the pool, right? So that's number one. And number two, do not stop learning. Just because you've graduated and now you're looking for a job doesn't mean you stop learning. There are websites such as Biz Community, which is a big website from a marketing standpoint of view. You can go read about various campaigns, the marketing world, stay in touch with what's happening locally and internationally. Read and read and read. Social media is there as well. You can get into case study upon case study upon case study in the various industries you want to get into. So if you're applying to a specific industry or you're interested in a specific industry, make sure you immerse yourself with information about that industry and read, so that when the opportunity comes, it truly finds you ready. I don't know if I've answered all the questions.
Yes, thank you, Grace. There's a follow-up question from what you just mentioned about never stop learning. What skills are high in demand in marketing, and what short courses could you recommend? I hold an honors and a degree in marketing.
Short courses. I know how important it is for us to get qualifications. It's quite important, and we're always looking to upskill ourselves, right? So at this stage, I don't necessarily know of any specific short, because it depends what field of marketing you want to go into. For instance, marketing is so broad. There's advertising, there's market research, there's digital marketing, there's above the line marketing or advertising, which is radio, TV. So it depends what field you want to get into. But one of the things I'll still say is, please ensure that you keep yourself up to date with what's happening in the digital world. It's moving so quick and so fast that, what we learned 5 years ago is no longer relevant today. So if you do have money to continuously learn, by all means, please get into understanding marketing and AI, get into understanding digital marketing, get into understanding, things like Google Ads. And I saw a marketer just 2 days ago speaking about how Google Ads are dead. So you also have to be careful what information you take in and what information you don't take in, because it may not necessarily relate to the local South African market, but it's more an international thing where Google Ads may be dying. So for me, I would say try and find jobs where you can volunteer. As I said, it's important to continuously learn and get short courses, but I feel like also try and find places where you can volunteer. There aren't readily available jobs all the time. So go through, even if it's a small business. I know that first point of call, everybody would love for us to start our careers in a proper corporate company with, proper internship or marketing assistant job, etc. That would be great. So stay on those internship websites, etc. If not, go in and volunteer. That's a critical part of learning. We all know that when you apply for a job, they always ask, what years of experience do you have, right? So I would recommend that find areas or companies, whether even if it's small companies in your areas where you can go and volunteer, go and apply the marketing theory that you have within those companies, because it starts helping you learn and apply what you've learned. And when you go for interviews, you're able to demonstrate that you've shown initiative to say, I've gone to my local dry cleaning business, for instance, and this is what they were suffering from, i.e. they only had 10 sales a month, and this is how I moved them from 10 sales to 20 sales, and these are the various things that I implemented to help them move that needle to that. So I would say volunteer as much as you can to get into the job market, use the theory that you've learned, and that will help you open up other opportunities. I mean, your CV starts looking different to someone who's completely not done anything versus someone who's saying, I've volunteered here and I've learned this experience. It also shows that you're able to show initiative, and as a result, it gives a potential employer, the interest to at least give you an interview as a start.
Thank you so much, Grace. So I think you're also echoing what County, our previous speaker, spoke about, the importance of really being thoughtful about the connections that you can start making between what it is that you're studying, but then also what are some of the problems that businesses experience and how you would be able to add value. There's just a comment here on the chat from Zotwa. Indeed, focused hard work does pay off. So they appreciated that from you. Then there's also just one more question on the chat, more about your business that you spoke about. How were you funded for your business, and also what impact has your business made in your community?
Okay, so thank you for that question. I did not have funding. So I started off, remember, when I still had my marketing career. So I still had a full-time job. So it was a part-time job that I started. I would do it, over the weekends, after work, etc. And as a result, I was able to build capital towards it. Now, back then, it was not, there was no brick and mortar per se. I used to do, boot camp classes. I used to do, I used to run a mobile spa at the time. And when I then decided to have a full-on brick and mortar business, and I actually have a spa and offices, etc., I used savings from my corporate job to get started. Were they enough? Absolutely not. They were not enough, because they say it takes up to 3 years for you to truly see that, to truly start making money. So I've had to think of creative ways in order for me to grow the income while the business is growing. So going back to, I think, let me just double click on that. Those who want to start a business, don't wait for big funding to start. Start very small. I always say, if I relate it to the field that I'm in well-being, so let me just briefly explain what I do. I've got a spa, and we do all treatments as you know them, full body massages, etc., nails, lashes, and all of that stuff. I also work with corporate companies to develop corporate wellness days for them, where we do wellness days, we do wellness programs, we also do wellness immersions where people come and we work hard, have healthy food. I work with dietitians as well. So there's various things that we do from a corporate and an individual standpoint. It didn't start there with me doing corporate work. It didn't start there with me doing, owning the spot. You start small. So think about, what is that small thing I can start? There's a friend of mine who's been retrenched, and they've been out of a job for almost 2 years now. And they've just received money from SARS. And they joked, Grace, I'm going to take this money and just start a boerewors roll caravan. And I said, you joke, but that's actually it. And you're a true marketer. So go start that boerewors roll. And you then think about, from a marketing standpoint, what am I going to do that's going to make it different to all the other boerewors roles? You know, am I going to pair it with coffee, with hot chocolate in winter? Am I going to pair it with a drink and then charge it X amount so that it's palatable? So you start very small with what you have and you build on it. So when you get income, you don't chow the income. You invest it back into the business, and every time it keeps growing and keeps growing. And before you know it, you now have this capital to do that one big thing that you've been wanting to do.
Thank you, Grace. Just following on that, you spoke earlier about volunteer work, also starting small as some of the ways that you can build that experience that you need. There's a question here, are there practical ways for marketing students to build a portfolio while studying, such as freelance work, digital marketing projects, or student campaigns?
So there definitely are. You know, marketing is not like actuarial science. It's not like accounting. It's one of the, I would say, and apologies if I'm speaking out of privilege, it's one of the less challenging careers to get into. For instance, as I made an example earlier about a local dry cleaning service, you can go there and say, do you guys have a social media account? Yes or no? If they don't, let me open a social media account. You already have a phone that you use every day. You have data. Let me open a social media account. Start there with how you're going to, with applying the digital learnings you've learned. Start there and open that account for them, and then build up from there. It doesn't always have to be like a big bang start. You know, I don't know if I answered the question. I feel like there were two parts to the question.
I think that covers it. It's just a very practical example of, again, you know, you don't have to think very big. You can start small. And the example that you mentioned of approaching local businesses, you know, just having conversations with entrepreneurs, seeing what kind of problems they face, and, you know, how you could use, for example, your marketing studies that you've completed so far to then assist those businesses. So that's one way of building up your portfolio, definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just want to check, we are almost out of time. If there's anybody that would want to ask Grace a live question, you're welcome to raise your hand in Teams, then I will unblock your microphone. While we are waiting for some more hands, let me just check. Okay, so there's another question about, as a tourism management student who also runs a branding business, what can I do to strengthen my marketing skills and grow my own business while still studying? So if there's anything else in addition to what you've shared already, Grace, in terms of that question.
So they run a tourism business.
A branding business. They are a tourism student.
Okay.
And they run a branding business. So what can I do to strengthen my marketing skills and also grow my business while I'm studying?
Okay, so as a tourism student, so they're trying to grow their branding business.
Yes.
Okay, so this has nothing to do with tourism. It's just about their branding business. And what are they branding?
It's a good question. Tsepo, if you could post in the chat, or you're even welcome to unmute. Yeah, to ask your question live. I'll just see if Tsepo. Okay, let's give Tsepo time to answer, but I see there are two hands. So I will give you a brief opportunity to ask your question. Tando, you're welcome to unmute and ask your question. Tando?
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good
afternoon. And yeah, thank you, Grace, for your informative session. So I've actually typed a question in the chat, but it was not read. So I just want to ask, as a startup entrepreneur, what is the correct or reasonable markup percentage that one should add onto the product that they resell in order not to overcharge clients?
That's quite it depends. So it's a difficult question to answer. I would always say pricing strategy for me, I would say look at your overall costs. And once you've looked at your overall cost, and this includes your overheads, your rent, electricity, paying people that are actually going to do the work if you're paying people. So take all your costs, and I would say then I can't even give a percentage to say add 10%, add 15%, because you're also influenced by the competition. So you've also then got to look at who already has a product similar to what I'm selling and how much is it for. And that's when you then find the right balance between covering your expenses, which is also a dangerous strategy, because when you're starting out, it costs a lot to start out. So your expenses are usually quite high. And then now you must look at, other competing products. What are they charging? And then where do you price yourself? So you're going to have to think about various pricing strategies. Am I going to use an entry strategy where I'm the cheapest in the market so that people can come and try my products, and once they get used to my products, I can then increase? Or am I going to truly go and offer a true affluent product that has all the bells and whistles? As a result, I can charge the BMW price. So it all depends, because a markup has there's so many factors to keep in mind. But I would say between 30 and 50%, that's kind of fair. But don't forget to think about the competitors, because they're also still there.
Thank you very much, Grace. Okay, there was one more hand up, but after that hand, we will need to move over to the next portion of our program.
Sorry, sir. Apologies. Before you move on, I see there's a question on the right. Someone is asking, can you please tell me more about your business and what problem it solves?
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll just give a brief answer to that. So the reason I started my business, I grew up a chubby person, chubby girl, and teenagers, even when you're not chubby, you think you're chubby. And I've always been on a diet all my life. And eventually I started working. I've always been on diets. And then eventually, when I was now employed, I was able to pay for dietitians and all those things, and I lost weight. And for me to keep the weight off, I knew that I have to maintain this lifestyle. It can't just be, I'm on a diet, I'm done now. Otherwise, I'm going to gain weight again. So it became a lifestyle. And so I then saw the benefits of leading a healthy lifestyle. And, once you've fixed your body, you start looking at other things. Is my mental state all right? What other parts of my life need fixing psychologically? What is it? And after I've gone through all that 360, I loved it so much that I wanted to help others benefit from holistically looking after themselves. And that's how I started Healthy 365. And that's why it's called, it's about being healthy 365 days of the year. So whenever I do my wellness engagements, it's about mental health, mental wellness, physical wellness, financial wellness, because it's all encompassing. So my objective is to help people lead a healthy lifestyle. We lead such busy lives where it's quite demanding. There's jobs for those who are working, there's children, there's families, there's all these kinds of things, and we actually forget about ourselves. And to be honest, without ourselves, we don't have those careers. We can't look after our families. We forget ourselves because we're trying to look after our families. So all that my business is doing is to say, do not forget yourself. Come back and look after you so that you can actually live healthier and longer and look after your families and yourselves longer. Now, when you look at corporate companies, culture is very important. A lot of companies will keep staff not because they pay them more, because of the incredible culture that they have. So employee wellness programs are part of building a culture that helps employers build a great employee value proposition. So from a corporate standpoint, I'm there to enhance corporate value propositions to make sure that their businesses, or at least their companies, are found attractive by potential employees.
Thank you so much, Grace. I'm sure that we can keep you here for the rest of the afternoon. But in the interest of time, we do need to move on to the next presentation. I know that you shared your socials earlier in your presentation. If you don't mind, if you could also just post that on the chat, so those who are more interested in you and your business could then also engage with you on social media. But thank you very much, and thank you also for all the questions that we could get from the attendees and also how you answered them. Thank you.
Thank you
with that,
so much.
Hi, Lisa.
Thank you, Grace.
Hi, Lisa. I see there's a hand for Kutlwano. I don't know whether it's a legacy hand.
Okay, let's give Kutlwano a very brief moment because we really need to move on. But you're welcome to unmute and just ask your question. Kutlwano, we can hear, but there's like a lot of static noise. I think the best would be you can go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to know, as someone without working experience, is studying further, getting a postgrad, beneficial in the marketing field?
Okay,
And and as an entrepreneur, how do I show in my CV the businesses that I have in order to apply for at least an entry-level job?
Thank you, Kutlwano. Grace, if you can just briefly comment on that.
Okay, so as an entrepreneur, I'd say absolutely it's critical for you to study, to continue studying. One of the things that I had done, so I registered an MBA degree and I finished stage 1, but then I took a break because then I was transitioning from corporate into running a full-time business. And for me, I wanted to make sure that my thesis is about the business that I'm in now, because if I had completed my MBA while I was studying, it would have been very much corporate skewed, even though I've left that part of the world. So it's important to continuously learn as an entrepreneur and learn within the field that you are going to be servicing and become an expert at it. Being an entrepreneur doesn't mean you stop studying or you stop empowering yourself. You continuously empower yourself and do that. And so in terms of, including the experiences that you've done on your CV for potential jobs, always look at what value did I add. Look at how, when I started, what was the current situation? What problem was I solving and how did I solve it? Even if it's not quantifiable, even if you write it in sentences, just write it out to say, this was the problem, this is how I solved it, this is the value I added, and continuously write that and then look at that and then say, I've solved this. For the next one, what am I going to be solving? Use every single thing you have and every single thing you've done to grow your portfolio.
Thank you so much, Grace. Unfortunately, I see there are more hands. If you don't mind, if you could post those questions in the chat so that we can invite or introduce our next speaker. And we will then have another Q&A session after her presentation. So with that, thank you very much, Grace. And then I am going to invite my colleague, Mrs. Makanya, if she could just please introduce our next speaker to us.
Thank you, Lisa. It is an honor to introduce a seasoned professional who plays a vital role in shaping talent and leadership within South Africa's legal sector. She is the recruitment manager at Baker McKenzie's South Africa office, part of one of the world's most prestigious and global integrated law firms. With over a decade of experience in talent acquisition and development, our speaker, ladies and gentlemen, has established herself as a trusted leader in identifying, attracting, and developing high potential professionals within complex and fast evolving environments. Her passion for leadership development is evident in the way she approaches her work, championing talent that not only meets today's demands, but is also equipped to lead with purpose and resilience in the face of tomorrow's challenges. With a solid foundation in strategic human resources leadership, our speaker, ladies and gentlemen, has made a lasting impact in legal recruitment, fostering pathways for emerging leaders to grow and thrive. Her ability to align people's strategies with organizational vision continues to influence the way legal talent is shaped and supported across the profession. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me with a warm round of applause as we welcome Ms. Boipelo Soko on our virtual stage. Thank you, Lisa. Over to you, Boipelo.
Mando, I'm wondering, can we check in with Boipelo? I'm not sure if she's experiencing any problems.
Okay, sure. Let me check.
Okay. While we're waiting for Boipelo to join us, I just want to appreciate something, some of the comments that you made. There's a comment here from Kagiso about research takes the most time. So it's in response to the pricing issue that the previous person asked. So you need to compare quality versus prices, location, etc. And starting means whatever you make, you reinvest. It's a lot, really. Yes, Kagiso, it is. Then also a question about the recording of the seminar. We are recording. So as soon as or later this afternoon, when we are done with our program and we've ended the session, you will get a notification in Teams that the recording is available. Thank you, Portia, for answering that. Also an appreciation. Thank you to the organizers for this. I felt very confused about my next move after completing BCom Business Management. You've helped me to start formulating a plan. So thank you very much. Thank you for that comment. Yes, Mandu?
Sorry, okay, Boipelo is struggling. When she unmutes, it just drops her to attendees, not as a presenter. Can you help her? I've sent the phone, the cell number to you.
Thank you. Will you then also just go through the comments and if there are any questions that we could start answering?
While waiting, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to mention this as a, by the way, any question that is related to registration, please drop it on the Q&A or on the chat box, and our team from CAPMS, they will try to help you in regards to those questions. Thank you. Portia, whilst we wait for Lisa and Boipelo to sort out the technical glitch, are there any questions that perhaps you think you can address that are related to registration?
Okay, thank you so much, Prof. And in terms of the registration, we've picked up that some of the students are struggling. Maybe let me greet first. Good afternoon, and we are happy to have you here. Some of the challenges that we see is students send their registration inquiries all over. However, probably I can go through it now so that they see what is it that they need to do when they are not sure who to send an inquiry to. Let me share while we are still waiting. Can you see my the Unisa website? Okay. This is where if you have a registration inquiry and we are not sure who to send that inquiry to, on the landing page, there is a space that says contact us. You click on that drop-down arrow and then you go to email inquiries. It will indicate who to contact. In terms of registration, this is where we are. If you are on an undergrad, if it's just general application and registration, this is where you send them. If it's postgraduate and honors, for economic and management sciences is econhons at Unisa. For MND, it's everyone that has MND, masters and doctoral related inquiries. Then it shows you again in terms of the College of Economic and Management Sciences, you can see there, but this is registration related because some of the challenge that we've identified is you'll find that student will send such inquiries to the college. Unfortunately, the college deals with academic related matters. So if it's a registration, we do not have registration access and registration rights. If you send it to us, we will just be a post office and forward it to them because we do not have access to activate any registration. So this is where you will see all the contact details based on the type of inquiry that you require. And then if you need to speak to the college, this is where you click, and then you go College of Economic and Management Sciences, and this is our college website. Within our college website, you can see we have a message from the director, from the dean. If you want to contact us, which is me and my colleagues, this is where we are. This is our number. And you see here, it still tells you when you need advisor, registration advisor, it still takes you back to those contact emails that I've shown you. However, if it's specific to your department, this is where you click. Depending on which school, because some students don't even know where the school, their department, which school their department falls under. You will see here under the School of Economic and Financial Sciences, if you are coming from the Department of Decision Science, you need to click Decision Science. Then under Decision Science, you can see if you want to speak to a staff member there regarding the content related, this is what where you will click. You will see this is the chair. This is the acting director of the school. These are administrative professionals that are working there. Then these are the professors. However, again, if it's a module specific inquiry, within your tutorial letter 101, you will find the information of your lecturer in that space. Then you need to engage your lecturer. Sometimes they will give you their email address, or sometimes you get also an email address of a lecturer and the module inbox. Please try not to send to everyone. The challenge of this is it creates duplication. You can imagine there's 239, let's say more or less 200 students in this platform. If all of you have sent to 5 or 7 people within this, send an email to all the organizers with the same email, it means instead of helping other students who would have duplicated the work 200 times, each one would have looked at it. Because when we receive an email, we don't ignore it. We read it, you check, oh, this does not belong to me. I need to route it to someone else. And sometimes you find that that email has been sent to a person who is not even responsible for that. So it is very important that you familiarize yourselves with it, especially now after registration. The first thing you need to do, make sure you read your tutorial letter 101. Make sure you always log in to check the lecturer's announcement. 3, make sure you always check your My Life. Now, on the module sites, this is where your lecturer will communicate module-related communication. For a specific module, it goes on the module sites. For Unisa correspondence, it will go to your My Life. But for general information, this is where when you go to the website, as I'm going now, when you click My Unisa, you will see all the information relating to students is there. This is general information, like now they tell you about the May-June post-exam student communication. You open it, you read, what is it that they are talking about? Right now, Unisa is hosting a 3-minute thesis competition. If you are at a doctoral level, then you go and check what is this thesis all about. Because as a distance learning institution, there are specific engagement through your module sites. There's also generic communication that affects all students that are registered in our institution. So it is important to understand all these different platforms and what they are used for. I don't know, Memakanya, if I've covered enough.
Yes, Portia, thank you so much. And if you can just briefly also clarify the issue of the allocation of supervisors for M&D students. And Lisa and Buipilo are almost there. They will be joining us shortly. But if you can just cover that part.
Okay,
Thank you.
Colleagues, excuse me, Portia, you're more than welcome to finish up what you wanted to demonstrate. Boipelo did manage to join us now, and it seems like we've sorted out the technical details.
okay, I will just be short now.
Thank you.
When students apply, the first thing that they need to do, like I'm clicking on apply, you go to M&D because supervision affects the M&D. They need to go and check the focus area, because these are some of the challenges that you find that a student is submitting something that is not even aligned to the focus area. Then when you click here, it gives you what is it, which focus area is there per department. Once you understand that, that's when you can start saying, okay, now based on these focus areas, you can see these are the 2025 focus areas. Under economics, it will tell you, and development economics, international economics, then they also within each, they provide guidelines and the contact person. I would advise students that, but when you apply, make sure you go through this, contact the contact person, depending on the lead researcher, depending on the specialization, because when it comes to supervision, we must have the capacity. If we do not have the capacity, we are unable to assist. However, I don't think that's the only thing that's stopping the university from allocating supervisors. Sometimes students are not even aligned in terms of the guidelines. If you go back here, you see these are the guidelines. And I think for the part of the allocation, where if Prof. Moraka is still here, she will take it. But we need capacity to be able to assist. But we also need to take that first step to ensure that we are adhering to what was required. Are we aligned? Is our study aligned? Because the reason they show us those focus areas is because there is capacity. And if you look at it, it even shows you what is the capacity in that space. If I can go back here, it even shows you the capacity. Do you see? In this space, we can only have capacity for 6 masters and 3 doctoral studies. So it's like the application, it's survival of the fittest, if I can loosely say it. But when you are aligned and followed the guidelines, then you know that you are at a competitive advantage, instead of just sending any random application without following the proper guidelines that will assist your application to be at that competitive advantage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Portia. Okay, so Boipelo, if we could just test that you are now able to unmute.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you very much. Mando has already introduced you, so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Hazel, and to everyone for your patience. I appreciate you. Thank you. I guess you guys didn't catch me when I said this earlier to Mando. What a beautiful introduction. Thank you. I was like, who is she talking about? Surely it's not me. I guess good afternoon, everyone. By way of introduction, I'm Boipelo. I'm going to share my screen in a little bit. I am a recruitment manager based in South Africa's Baker McKenzie office. As I've mentioned, I'm very thrilled to be here today. I have an extremely soft spot for Unisa, but I think now more for Hazel, well, for Mandu as well as Lisa. So whenever they ask, I make time. And more than that, I'm very, very passionate about human resources. It's a space that I've been in now for just over 10 years. And unlike you, I didn't necessarily study towards it. It found me in my career, and I'm so grateful that I then leaped in and find myself where I am today. So in this presentation today, I'm going to go through, what is human resources from a practice perspective. I've seen some of the questions that have popped up with the previous speakers, especially in Grace's chat or Grace's discussion. And I think there is some alignment to some of the questions that have been raised. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to touch on those. I would like for this to be an interactive session as much as possible. I'm mindful that we probably have a little bit of time left. So if you can post your questions as I'm talking, that would be great. And then I can try to get to them as quickly as possible. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. I will switch off my video only because I was struggling with my connection for a while. Okay, so let's get straight into it. What is HR today? So HR really has evolved far beyond payroll and paperwork. It's not just admin as most people ordinarily would think of it as, but rather a strategic partner to any business. Functions cut across many spaces, from recruitment, which is what I do, to learning and development, employee relations, employee experience, like Grace also touched on in her discussion, analytics and the like. So it really is about being a strategic partner in shaping a company culture, driving performance, and obviously supporting business goals. It's a dynamic field, I like to think, it because it touches on so much in an organization. So why choose a career in HR? For those of you that are still considering or have made this decision, I'd like to actually, if you can think about the question that I posed on the screen, what kind of impact would you like to make in your future workplace? From an HR perspective, it's one of those few careers where you directly impact people's lives and livelihoods, as well as the success of a business. You help shape inclusive workplaces, you support employee growth, and you influence leadership decisions. And of course, HR skills are globally transferable, so your career can take you anywhere in the world. The types of skills that are required over and above the technical skills are the communication and empathy is quite an important thing to enable. In order to thrive in HR, you need to have strong communication and empathy for the people that you work with. You also need to be a problem solver, especially when you're managing conflict or change. Technology skills are also increasingly important. I give an example there of application tracking systems, and I'll touch on why that's important in a little bit. We also, when you're using especially technology tools for recruitment or onboarding of people, that's in fact quite standard now. And then, of course, from an HR perspective, making sure that you have an understanding of labor law, as well as being an ethical person. That's essential in your growth as an HR professional. Okay, so this, I'm sure most, if not all of you know it yet, the career paths for HR professionals. This is very basic. The slide here, there's all types of different ways that you can grow into. So maybe starting at its most basic level, at entry level, you can start off as an HR assistant or recruiter, internal recruiter, external recruiters, it's up to you. Moving up into mid, so HR VPs, an L&D specialist, and then senior as an HR director or as a chief HR officer, so the CHRO, and that would be really you're an executive at that point. And then the other lateral roles that HR enables you to go into, so DEI, HR technology, like I touched on earlier, employee experience, like Grace touched on as well in her presentation, coaching, consulting, job evaluations, performance management, etc. There really is quite a wide areas to venture into. Great. So let's look at succeed in this space. Let's start with your skills in your education. Skills at this current level, obviously what you're studying, thinking of it as your toolbox, the skills that you need in order to grow. There's a need for continuous upskilling, and you need to stay informed about what's happening in industry trends. And then obviously also then thinking about if you want to do further studying, so certifications that are specific to the HR practice. For those of you that are doing HR management, you'll know that, or you should know that HR management at Unisa, for example, is accredited to the SA Board for People's Practices, so SA, that's the SAB PP. So the studies that you're doing there, you get automatic accreditation. That's an advantage that you don't get in many other areas. You could also then, once you then go into working, looking at if you want to work globally or be relevant globally, looking at getting certifications in maybe the Society of HR Management, so that's the SSRM, or the Chartered Institute of Personnel Development. If I had to distinguish between the two, the SHRM and the CIPD, so the SHRM is more like EMEA focused, so Europe, Middle East, Africa, and then CIPD is a lot more global focused, so quite prevalent in the US. Having those types of certifications, as an example, sometimes the thing that can distinguish you and actually help you, get the role in comparison to competitors. Looking at networking and support. So how are you trying to grow? Which areas of HR are you interested in? I would think at this point in your study, you probably don't know for a fact. You would want to know in practice, but this is where the networking and support really does help. Going out, talking to different people, understanding how they came about their career paths. So what is it that they needed to do to move over and advance into the specific spaces? And looking at people's profiles, for example, on LinkedIn is a great way for you to figure out how you can structure your own growth and what is it that you would need to do. Looking at your own critical experiences. So where do you have expertise? What has helped you build your confidence? Have you volunteered? Have you done any internships? Have you done any challenging projects or leadership roles? And they don't necessarily need to be within companies. Some of it can be even during the course of your studies. And then, of course, the last one being your self-awareness. So what is it that you're wanting to do? What are your areas of development? What are your strengths and how are they aligned to your career and your personal goals and values? Okay. So in terms of doing more research, I think it's really just looking at what are the different resources available to you. So within the industry, as I've mentioned, so if we're talking about there's so many different types of associations that you could join, or even conferences. I know, like now that we're soon headed into summer, there are quite a few HR conferences that are going to be coming up, and some of them are free, some of them are online. Are those things that you could join, go to, and get a little bit more insight into? That also then helps you understand where's the industry going and how do you see yourself being a part of that. Company sites, so if and when companies are advertising, what kind of people are we saying we're looking for? Yeah, and then your research methods, of course, like I touched on in the previous example, so experiential, so the things that you've done, socially and who you're networking with, and of course, desktop / on your phone. Yeah, those are the traditional methods. And then what to research would help you is from defining your options. So if we looked at the first couple of slides that I had, if you looked at the different roles, like if you know, for example, you have no interest in L&D, then don't even bother looking at those options. Look at something else. If you have an interest in payroll, right? I think many people think that payroll is boring, but it's quite a complex, interesting area of HR that not a lot of people actually go into. And then building your knowledge and gathering your insights will help you then get to where you want to be. I'm quickly going to pause and answer Nantlanta's question about struggling to get into internships. She asked if you could please touch base on how professionals in your CV want our CVs to be. Nantlanta, what we're really looking at is my previous slide. So we want to see what is it that you've done. I'm just going to go back to the previous slide. We're really looking at how do you explain all of this in the CV. So your skills, your education, how are you continuing to upskill yourself? What is it that you've attended? What is it that you're then looking to gain? Your critical experiences that maybe here we could maybe touch on leadership skills or any volunteering work that you've done. So if you're looking for an internship, what are the other aspects that you could focus on to help you gain experiences and actually obviously gain skills that then speak to the work that you want to do. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the self-awareness for what is it that's a gap in your CV that you're then looking to fill. Okay, let me just go backwards. Sorry. Okay. So I'll share a quick story on not necessarily my journey, but how we're also seeing automation impacting recruitment. In my company right now, we're implementing a new application tracking system. And basically what that is when people are applying for any role anywhere in the world, so Baker McKenzie is a global firm. We've got offices across 25 countries in the world. Well, obviously in the world. And we all use the same system. So if Portia, for example, if Portia is applying for a role, and that role is not necessarily bound to an office, but is bound to a region, so we'll call it EMEA, then all the recruiters in the EMEA region would pick up on Portia's CV, but the recruiter that is specifically running that role is the one that would continue with that. So rolling out this new system, it's quite an interactive system. And what it reminded me, even with plus 10 years in experience, is how automation can really streamline my processes. But also reinforcing the importance of my human touch and my expertise. That's not something that will be replaced even in my role. What could make me replaceable is if I refuse to learn how to use systems and to analyze my data to get the best candidates that are fit for my company. And that's what would make me replaceable, not necessarily my skill set in the sense of my skill set to date. It's about the fact that I need to continuously be learning, being on top of the fact that HR is evolving, and also importantly, so are the people that I'm recruiting, right? So you guys, as an example, how you interact even with things like AI, different types of languages, etc., language modules. I need to have an understanding of that because I need to understand how they would impact the business, even if they don't impact that business in a major way today. So just closing off, I really have zoomed through this, through my slides, but just closing off, I just want to remind you that HR is rewarding and impactful. Yes, I will send my presentation so you can get it. Honestly, stay curious and proactive. Be curious and proactive in terms of the different areas of HR that you could explore and why, and then being honest with yourself about what it is that you can and can't do, and also not being afraid to take a risk on yourself. I'm going to stop sharing my slides now. I will share the slide and I'll email it so that it can be shared with everyone here, and then I'll now address the questions on the screen.
Thank you so much, Popelo. Before we start with the questions, to be fair, I will also ask you the same question that I asked our other presenters. I hope you took some notes. But just some, in addition to what you've already shared, the advice and tips for students to really start proactively thinking about how we can prepare for career opportunities now specific in the HR field. And then also just a bit of comment on how, artificial intelligence, AI, has impacted on HR practices internationally.
I'll start on the second one because it's the easier one. AI automation it's touched on HR, I think, in the most profound ways. Like I mentioned, it's about then understanding how we use AI to be more efficient. I gave this example, though, to a group of Unisa Society students that were in our office a couple of weeks back. What's more important than my understanding of how AI is impacting roles is candidates understanding how they're using AI in terms of understanding, in terms of them developing their skill set. So just to give like a simple example, the presentation I shared today, I go on a system that we use internally. It's very similar to like a ChatGPT, but it draws from the information that's available on my desktop, in my emails, on our shared drive, etc. And then I say, okay, cool, I'm going to be doing a presentation at Unisa on this topic. Can you help me co-draft it, right? And we start working together. I clean it up, I insert specific examples, I make sure that it's relevant, I make sure that it is accurate, and then, you know, obviously then put it into house style, etc. So house style just being the look and feel of Baker McKenzie. That is an efficiency tool, because what that did for me in my day-to-day job is, instead of me spending 3 hours working on a presentation, I could finalize it in an hour. But for a candidate, what that would look like is how you clean up your LinkedIn profile, how you clean up your cover letter, how you clean up your CV, how you edit your emails before you send them out to a recruiter to say you're looking for a specific role. I know you've all seen this, where you go on LinkedIn and somebody is literally written out like a page and a half worth of a post about a seminar that they attended, a course they've just finished. And if you know that person on a day-to-day basis, you know they don't talk like that, right? So it's almost like that person just went and said, hey, ChatGPT, I went to the seminar, help me draft what were the key takeaways. And ChatGPT did that for you. But when you meet that person and you're trying to extract from them, what is it that you actually got out of that session? They aren't able to articulate it. So those are the things that you're now, from an HR perspective, I'm now having to be extra vigilant. What candidates put on paper versus what they will say when I meet them in a first interview. I have declined what looked like really, really good paper applications. In fact, extraordinary paper applications that just didn't align with the person who you then met in a face-to-face interview. Because once you make it through the application system, so now you've gone in the application system, you've put in all the keywords that you picked up on the role that we've advertised. You've picked up keywords and you've included them into your cover letter, into your CV. And now you finally make it into an interview, or sometimes even a video interview, which might be before you even meet me. And suddenly it's like the language of the person who's speaking and the examples that they're giving don't align with what this person has drafted on paper. Then automatically I know that this person doesn't have the confidence in who they are and what it is that they are bringing to the table. So to me, Lisa, I think the real game changer in terms of AI isn't only in the efficiencies that it is already giving to us in our day-to-day basis, but it is in how we then engage and interact with the people that we are looking to bring into our organizations. And then once the people are in, ensuring that the people are constantly upskilling in line with where the industry is going, in line with where the industry is going and what is required of them in order to remain a competitive organization. Because, like I said, ultimately, an HR professional is constantly managing the two aspects, the one being people and the other one being business. Sorry, Lisa, I forgot, what was the first part, your first question?
Just some very quick tips, maybe top 3 things that students can start doing to prepare for career opportunities, but then specifically in HR. You mentioned, for example, the professional organization. So I guess that could be an example of something that you can already do as a student. So what would be some other things that you would really highlight?
I guess like the other speaker mentioned, use your network, but be clever about it. So if you're going on LinkedIn, if you're reaching out to people, I think you must also remember that you're effectively reaching out to strangers, and sometimes people will have the capacity to respond and other times they don't. So don't place all your eggs in one basket. Don't just look at one person's profile and be like, if this person doesn't come back to me, then this is the end of it. Like, reach out to different types of people. So like, I do interviews and sessions as well. So quite often I would be on like YFM on their morning show for their HR slots whenever they have HR questions or something that's trending from an HR perspective that has influenced people, and now they want to unpack that. And what invariably happens is, as soon as I'm done, I go on my LinkedIn and I have not a million, but I have a whole host of requests. And sometimes you have people specifically asking things like, please have a look at my CV, review it, give me any tips, or I'm trying to get into HR, I'm trying to get into law, which is what Baker McKenzie is, we're a law firm. How do I make my CV more competitive? Who do I reach out to? And as much as I would love, in my ideal world, I would love to be able to respond to people and help them, like pair them with a future employer. The reality of it is I'm not able to, because I also have limited capacity. And so I always think, I hope that this person is also then looking at, because when you go on LinkedIn, if you search for my profile, it'll give you suggestions for at least 3 or 4 other people that have similar profiles to me. I would hope that you reach out to maybe even 2 other people and say, hi, I've looked at your profile, because maybe you didn't hear them on Y that morning. I've looked at your profile. I am interested in going into HR. This is my CV. If you can have a look at it, I'd be interested in your views, or alternatively, I'd like to follow you and kind of see what are the things that you're interested in, and follow that. So I think it's going back to that element of being curious and proactive. If you are interested in taking your career to the next step, then you need to be willing to make different types of decisions to get you to where you need to be, and not being and not hoping that somebody's almost gonna, almost give a miracle job. It does happen. It does happen, but it doesn't happen to the majority. So I think it's using your resources. So constantly upskilling, like I mentioned, use your networks, but use them. You be smart with how you use them. If you're using career services at Unisa, like, make sure that the team knows you. Make sure that the right person in the team knows you, who can, make sure that you're looking at the opportunities aligned to your to your sector, or your industry. So don't pray and spray. Don't spray and pray. So basically, like, it's a wide net. You don't want to throw out a wide net and hope that somebody catches. You want to try to be as specific as possible, so that and intentional as possible, so that the right people are then engaging with you and giving you the guidance and advice that you can actually use. And then, like I said, I think that last one around that self-awareness. If you can see that you have an issue around communication, because I touched on the 2 skills, communication and empathy. If you're looking to go into HR, and you're worried about your communication skills, whatever, whether it's written or verbal, then work on that. Find ways to work on that. If you don't think you're a very empathetic person, but you're still interested in HR, then look at the spaces in HR where you may not necessarily have to interact with people on a day-to-day basis. So HR tech, for example, you're interacting with clients. So yeah, you're interacting with clients. If you are doing, to a small extent, if you're doing employee, maybe not employee experience, but maybe wellness, you'd engage with somebody like Grace to understand. You'd engage with Grace in terms of how do you onboard her into your organization for your people, and you're not necessarily the person having to engage with our people for them to be better, or etc. So I'm going to pause there, because I do see quite a few hands up, Lisa.
Yeah, thank you, Boipelo. I've unmuted, so let's just run through the questions. We are going a bit over time, but I think we lost a few minutes due to some glitches earlier in the program. I would really want us to finish at the latest by 1:45. So if we could just keep the questions and answers brief. Panele, you're welcome to unmute. Panele, I see your microphone is unmuted, but we can't hear you. I think let's, Panele, if you don't mind just posting in the chat so that we can go on to the next person. We've got Nontlantla. You are welcome to unmute and ask your question.
Oh, okay. Hello, everyone. Thank
Hi.
you, thank you, Boipelo, for such an amazing presentation. I feel like you just also answered most of my questions while you were doing the questions here. But also, I wanted to ask, how does one get to HR tech, like being a recruitment and tech?
So recruitment and tech, ordinarily, you would have to then work for companies that do that. So look at something like Salesforce, Avatar, which is what we use. Leaply is quite a popular one locally. Because what those companies do is what you see as the front end is what applicants are actually submitting on the application tracking system. But behind all of that is a whole industry of people that have to research, psychologists, or especially those of you guys that are doing the psychology honors. You would have to have people that are sitting at the back end, understanding what are the different levels, bands, requirements that you put into those systems before they're created and put out, and how are they constantly being reevaluated. I'm just trying to think of another example. It'll come to me. Amkhelang. Was it Amkhelang who asked that question?
No, it was
no. It's Nontlantla. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm gonna post it on the chat. There's one that's it's sitting on the tip of my tongue. But there's quite a few. What you could do is, again, just literally just Google companies that offer HR tech solutions, and then it should give you quite a few options to consider.
All right, thank you so much.
I think it was Genesis with a Y, Genesis Online, Genesis with a Y. Yes.
Thank you for the question. Thank you, Boipelo. Let's ask Amogelang. You are welcome to unmute and ask your question. Amogelang.
Greetings. Am I audible?
Yes. You are.
Oh, okay, greetings. Thank you, Boipelo. My question was about how do we specifically as Unisa students, be it undergrad or postgrad students, how do we pivot ourselves to the labor sector? Because there is narrative regarding Unisa as an institution to say that the degrees aren't really best fitted compared to other universities. So how do I then come as someone that has a Unisa degree and come forward to recruiters and make my qualification basically stand out, considering the type of learning institution, which is an open distance? So how can I come to recruiters and say, in as much as I'm a Unisa student and I did open distance, I'm still able to do A, B, and C. So how do we navigate that part?
You know, it's such a weird question to me, and I'll tell you why that's a weird question to me, Mahalang, because it's almost, I find that quite often Unisa students assume that they are at a disadvantage because they're Unisa students, as opposed to looking at the fact that you are studying remotely, you're self-managing, you are having to be a lot more proactive in terms of understanding the content of your work and how you engage with it. And then, of course, you find that you have Unisa students that are also working full-time whilst balancing their studies. That is a skill set that all all employers need. You need people that are able to prioritize, manage multiple priorities, multiple deadlines, also be goal-driven, working towards, in your case, the goal of finishing whatever the course is. That is an advantage more than it is a disadvantage. And if you don't recognize it as such, it means that even when you are working on your cover letter, you're assuming that you're on the back foot. You're not. What you do want to do is highlight, again, on your cover letter and your CV. And I see somebody asked me, do we actually read your CVs and your cover letters? We do. If I make the mistake of submitting a cover letter to a team that's looking to have somebody join them, and the cover letter is riddled with errors, or is very specific that this person actually doesn't have the required skill set because of how they've articulated their background and experience, then I am not doing my job. So we have to read your stuff, because I will be questioned by the hiring team, like, oh, did you see this person said A, B, and C? So what you want to do, Amahelang, on your cover letters, in your CV, is highlight all the things that you recognize as your skill set. And that's why I touched on that self-awareness and understanding what you bring to the table insofar as your skills are concerned, your skills and experience are concerned. You want to make it so clear to a person that they have no reason to not give you a call, or to at least advance you into the next stage. Maybe if I acknowledge your question differently, I think with some of the universities, so my niece actually studied, she did HR at UJ, and then she did her honors at Unisa. So we were actually at her graduation at the end of May. One of the things I picked up that was different between Unisa and her previous university, UJ, but also from friends and the like who studied elsewhere. At some of the universities, some employers, by virtue of being alumni, automatically go back to the universities and say, hey, we've got this opportunity. Can it be sent out specifically to the HR or psychology students? Because I studied here, I know the quality of the students here. That's something that I find that most of the other universities really do almost like create as a culture of the university. So the students are proud to go back and hire somebody from there. And I think your question for me almost reflects part of the problem, and maybe why we don't see as much of that with Unisa, is in that maybe the students, whilst they're studying, assume that you're not as competitive as your peers. And so you will, once you're in industry, I think you will assume that even students that are studying from your university were not necessarily the top of the game, which is quite unfortunate, but it is something that, I think the Unisa leadership probably has to look at how they rework that. In fact, that's also an HR role, right? It's a little bit of change management, change of culture, almost instilling a sense of pride. I mean, again, I was at that graduation a few weeks ago, and I even posted on it on my personal social media, not unlike LinkedIn. But I'd posted something like, I don't think I'd ever felt as much energy from people, from crowd, when people walked out of when all the graduates walked out. We were singing, we were dancing. It was an amazing energy. I've never seen that at any other graduation. But it's a pity that once people are in industry, it doesn't seem like there's as much of a carry that forward, which is what's actually required. Sorry, Lisa, I know you said be quick with the responses. Sorry. I can't help it. I'm just like, guys, come on then.
Yeah, as I said also to Grace, we could sit here for the rest of the day. I'm even thinking that at some stage we could consider having, what they call a Ask Me Anything, an AMA session, where we just invite people and we just have questions and we just answer them. But I think for the last one for today, and I really want to commit to, if there are questions that you asked on the chat that we didn't get to answer today, We will go back to those questions. We will be answering them. I will also be sharing our contact details, so please don't hesitate to reach out to us. But I think as an end, Boipelo, there's a question from Banele who earlier couldn't unmute. If you could maybe just comment on her situation. I'm not sure if you see the question there. I'm doing my HR internship in one of the NPOs. I've been taken through an induction and I'm working on obtaining practical experience to advance to an HR specialist. At the moment, I haven't been trained in a particular organization, and I know that training is crucial for HR interns. Now I have a training to facilitate online, but I wasn't taken through training. I'm thinking of going for corporate. What advice would you give to somebody in my situation?
Oh, Banela, first of all, congratulations on your internship. Look, I think you must remember sometimes smaller, medium, or even public or NGO sector, sometimes you don't get as extensive training opportunities or onboarding opportunities as you would in maybe larger organizations, not just corporates. But maybe this goes back to that comment or question that Lisa asked earlier. How are we using AI? You've identified a gap actually in your NPO. So what you want to do is say, okay, cool. I see that I wasn't necessarily trained and there's a need for training. They've now asked you to do it. I hope it's because you raised the question. Go online, Vanilla, go online, Google it. You're a student or you were recently a student, go into your study resources, look at best practice, look at templates, and then build from the needs of your organization. And then sense check it with someone. I again had this question asked to me on LinkedIn. Somebody emailed me and said, I've been asked to do this. I don't have experience in it. I didn't go through it. What do I do? And I was like, okay, cool. But like, what do you do? You know, in terms of the organization, not necessarily that person's role. And I was like, Google it, send me a draft. I can give you some comments. I'm not going to do it for you because it's your job. And that's it. Just that little inkling. And the first draft she sent me, I was like, oh, you're already on the right track. Clean it up and then send it through to your management and then start running it. And then make sure, obviously, that you can measure it after, because you want to be able to figure out how do you improve on it moving forward and how do you make sure that it's then sustainable. Do it that way, as opposed to jumping over into corporate where you would be given maybe a little bit more guidance. I think look at this, Vanilla, as an opportunity for you to stretch. Look at it as what I said earlier, it's a challenging project, and eventually that's something you're also going to be putting on your CV, that you moved into from training to HR specialist, having already started building these types of skills that somebody that is in a bigger organization as an intern simply won't have the opportunity because, you know, these things are already available there. Can I just take the one last question? I do see the hand up from Marcella.
You're welcome, Boipelo. Let me just see if they can ask. Panele is the question that we just took. There's Moditsa Masele. Let me just allow the microphone. Moditsa, you're welcome to ask your question. You've got the last question, so there's a lot of pressure on you. Moditsa? They disappeared. Okay, so I think
I am trying to answer some of the questions on the chat. Does the chat? I think everyone's still available on the chat even after, right?
Okay. Yes, Moditsa, you're welcome to go ahead. I can hear your voice. Moditsa, yeah. Okay, Moditsa, you're welcome to ask your question on the chat. Boipelo, thank you very much, and thank you for also staying on and answering some of the questions. As I've mentioned, we really commit to going back to the questions. If there are questions that you couldn't get answered live, we will send you a response. I've also posted some further resources in the chat. So please also take some time to take a look at the future events that we are organizing, as well as reaching out to Counselling and Career Development. I've posted our email address and also how to make an appointment with a counsellor. So on that note, Mandu, if I could please ask you just to end off the session for us today.
Thank you, Lisa. In the interest of time, I won't go into details of the presenters, but in summary, I just want to thank all our speakers in their order, starting with Panti, who dived deeply onto the economic issues and what it means to go into the economy, into a career as an economist. And we thank him for just answering all those employability questions around economics as a career. And then next it was Grace, who gave a very vibrant a presentation on marketing and and bridging from marketing from industry in turning that into a career or turning it into something that gave him a business. So thank you, Grace, for those insights that you shared. Even for students outside marketing, I would like to believe that they gained a great deal from your presentation. And my take was one reference that you made that says, please, people don't know what they want. We tell them what they want, and also how do you tell them what they want? And that was such a profound, those were two profound statements that will keep us thinking, even as people, as we go into our careers, do we want to be people that are told what we want? And we need to think about that. And lastly, Boipelo, she never disappoints all the time. It is very refreshing to sit in your audience, Boipelo. There is always something to learn, especially in issues of employability. And thank you so much for that encouragement for our students to say that they must believe in themselves, that as Unisa grads, they are as valuable for the world of work or for the job market as any other student that comes from any other contact university. I would like to believe that most of our students have proven that fact, and that is why we invite them back to come and talk to our students, even with our young professional seminar, so that the students who are battling with the thought that one of our students raised in terms of confidence, in terms of competing with students from other universities, please touch base with us so that we can help you to see yourself as the best as well, as much as anyone who comes from another university. Thank you so much, Boipelo, for your insights. And we know this is not the last time, as we are one of your favorite universities. Thank you so much for your insights. And to our colleagues, we'd like to thank Prof. and Prof. Ntapsing earlier, who gave a warm welcome to all our students and all our attendees. I'm sorry. Prof, thank you so much. We know that how busy your schedule is, and you made time for this event, and thank you very much for your making time for us. And thank you to all the colleagues and the team under the leadership of Ms. Poshiangobo from CAMPS for helping us behind the scenes. And also, Portia, thank you for those clarity points in terms of registration. And lastly, to our program director, Lisa, and our technical specialist for events. Thank you so much, Lisa, for running the program so well. And thank you to all of you Unisans who attended. Please, we are inviting you to attend more of these events. And the next event is this coming on Thursday, which we think should, if you have time, please don't miss it. But Lisa is going to take you through all the coming events in our program. With that being said, thank you very much for all of you for making this day a success. Over to you, Lisa.
Thank you so much, Mandu. I just want to share my screen again. I have posted in the chat the also a link to our evaluation form. So if you could also just take 2 to 3 minutes just to give us some feedback. It's quite important for us to know where it is that we can improve. And then, as Mandu now mentioned, just briefly sharing with you some of our upcoming events. So the first one on the 24th of July, we're going to talk about the skills revolution, how you can think about future-proofing your career, especially in South Africa's changing world of work. Then on the 28th of July, we will be talking about understanding multi-generational differences in the workplace. And then on the 31st of July, we are very excited to talk about igniting career opportunities with LinkedIn. So we truly hope that this is not the last time that we see you and that you see us. And we wish you all the best for your studies. And remember, as I said, don't hesitate to check in with us if you need to ask any questions. Thank you to my colleagues for supporting, and also to all of you for your participation and questions. Thank you. Have a very good day.